relationship and what it looks like going forward. We talk about it all the time.
We do, a lot, and trying to make sense. Is it going to be complementary, helpful, more productive, or is it going to take our jobs?
Okay, well, speaking of that,
Yeah.
earlier this month, the team over at Bloomberg Intelligence put out a report that said global banks will cut as many as 200,000 jobs in the next 3 to 5 years as AI encroaches on tasks currently carried out by human workers. Needless to say, workers are trying to figure out their place in the world of AI, and economists and behaviorists have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, one of them working on that is Kelly Monahan. She's an organizational behaviorist who is managing director of the Upwork Research Institute. That's the research arm of the platform Upwork, which matches talent with companies. She joins us right now from Orlando, Florida. Nice to have you back with us, Kelly. How are you?
I'm doing great. So great to see you guys again.
Yeah, it's great to see you as well. How are you thinking about AI and the relationship with how we work and what it means for jobs that might be replaced and new jobs that might be created?
Yeah, at Upwork, we're seeing this fascinating demand curve happen. So if we look at back in November 2022, when ChatGPT, I think, took the world by storm, what we saw happening within our labor market at Upwork was these general searches. So prompt engineering, ChatGPT, generative AI. If I'm going to be honest, I don't think many business leaders quite even understood what they were asking for. Fast forward to where we are today, early 2025, we see a much more mature market happening on our platform. And what that's meaning from a job task perspective is that freelancers today are having to become much more specialized. We realize generative AI is actually all about the data quality on the back end, and then being able to visualize it on the front end so leaders can actually do something with it. And so as a result of that, we're seeing much more specialized demand take place on our platform today.
Okay, so how do freelancers do that? What's the best way for them to make themselves, I don't want to say immune, but adjust to this new world? How do they become more specialized?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we see happening, let's take machine learning as an example. That's always been a category on our platform for the last several years. But what freelancers are doing is becoming more specialized with that and adapting to the new tool of generative AI and beginning to develop those skill sets of data annotation, data labeling as examples, or knowledge representation we see growing on our platform, which simply means being able to make patterns and sense of the data within their organization. And so freelancers, I think what you see is those that are traditionally trained in data science and machine learning are really adapting and evolving and understanding what does that mean in light of generative AI and this new tool that they have now at their disposal.
I mean, who are these people? Are they were there and they're just fine tuning their skills, or all of a sudden people are running out and getting trained? Like, who are these people that are now maybe considered part of the AI workforce? Well, we know AI has been around for a while.
Yeah, so what we see is two things. Absolutely, these are freelancers who've been on our platform for a while, who again have been, what we call now traditional AI, have been working in this domain for a while, and they're becoming much more in demand as they're adapting to new generative AI. In fact, like from a wage perspective, we're seeing those same data scientists who are now working alongside generative AI models command a 22% increase in their work, which I think is great. But we're also seeing new freelancers come into our platform, especially from the younger generation. And our survey work, we continue to see Gen Z in particular tell us that they prefer utilizing these, top skills that they have coming out of college and see much more stability in today's labor market by managing a portfolio of work. And so we're seeing a lot of new entries as well, especially from the younger generation on our platform.
What about from companies?
Yeah, from like a demand perspective.
Yeah, because you're a two-sided market. You serve,
Yes.
You serve the folks who are looking for work, and you also serve the folks who are looking for those folks.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
where are you seeing them adjust the way they're describing what they're looking for, the talent that they think they need, that sort of thing?
Yeah. So, one of the things that we haven't published, but that I see within our online platform, which is pretty exciting, is oftentimes if you think about Upwork and the demand, we see that a lot in our small and medium-sized middle market. But where we actually see some of the fastest growth right now for generative AI from a demand perspective is at larger companies. So larger enterprises. And in fact, like from an executive perspective, they're telling us about 1 in 2 executives today are actually turning to freelancers within these larger organizations to solve what they believe is an AI skills gap within their organizations. So as another example, only about 30% of full-time employees today say they're ready and willing and able to work alongside AI. And that's becoming a growing skills gap. We talk a lot about tech debt within organizations from an IT perspective. I don't know if we're talking enough about the skills debt that's within many of our organizations today as this technology rapidly, evolves and increases in demand. And I see those executives churning to freelancers to help fill that within their organizations.
Why aren't they hiring them full time? If AI is such the thing going forward and everybody's investing and is all in, why aren't they hiring full-time AI people?
I think there's two reasons for that. One, it's really tough because from an AI perspective, the job, like from a unit of analysis, jobs are going to, I think, fall behind. We see it's much easier to think about it from a project perspective, a task and skill perspective, because it's so new and so emergent. I'm not even sure a lot of executives know what that full-time role actually looks like today, but they certainly know they need the project or the skill set in place. And that just makes it a natural extension for freelancers, a much more natural fit. And then if we're going to be honest with you, I mean, we're in a tight job market right now. I still think executives today are hedging when it comes to full-time hiring as they, begin to navigate this market. And instead, we see much more bullish sentiment in tight labor markets. Again, about 1 to 2 executives who plan to increase hiring for freelancers, and it really helps hedge their balance sheets as they go into 2025.
Why do you think I need to turn on the mic here.
Maybe,
sometimes,
with AI,
AI would just recognize when
just go.
The mic needs to go on.
I was worried I was talking to AI right there.
Yeah, it would be better. It would be better than me at that. I do wonder, though, about this tight labor market. Have you seen the tight labor market that you described? Because certainly we're not seeing it as tight as it was at the height of the pandemic, or not the height of the pandemic, but height of post-pandemic, I should say. Where specifically are you seeing it tight? Because you talk to some folks out there, at least anecdotally, and we're also seeing this in the numbers that come from the government, but it's not as tight as it was. And folks who are looking for work, and this is anecdotal, it can be pretty tough out there, especially for recent college grads.
Yep. So I think we're in a transitional labor market right now. And we see this anytime that technology becomes disruptive. And to your point, coming out of the pandemic, we were in an unusual time with customer behavior habits at all-time high when it came to technology companies and buying habits online. And so I think we got out of balance pretty quickly during the pandemic. And I think we've now resumed to somewhat of a normal market. But we continue to see disruption, whether it's the LA wildfires. I'm here in Florida. We saw snow for the first time in a while. And so we continue to see this climate disruption as well that I think is influencing a lot of the data that we continue to see. And so I think we're in a transitional period. I think companies are still trying to figure out, what does AI mean for the business? What sorts of talent and skills do they need within their organizations? And I think you see some hedging going on, especially in the tech space, as they begin to right-size their organizations for the demand that's actually there today, post-pandemic, as well as figuring out what is the AI development and research that I need to have done. And that's certainly an investment. And I think, again, this is where, from an Upwork perspective, we benefit from in tight labor markets. Freelance begins to be on the rise when we see markets such as this.
One thing I wanted to ask you, Kelly, is now that Donald Trump is, first week in office, he's been pretty busy. And one of the first moves that we saw really kind of had to do with affirmative action, and specifically DEI initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and basically ending that for programs throughout the federal government. We're also talking about government contractors. And I am curious, since you are at this great intersection of workers and companies, how that might impact their hiring, if at all.
Yeah. We actually just released a book yesterday.
Congratulations.
It's called Essential. Thank you. Yes. And because, again, it's been an amazing week to see all the changes that are taking place. I can tell you from the research, the bottom line is higher performing companies are those that have diverse talent pools. Innovation comes from diversity. I think that's been pretty well proven time and time again in the research. And so the question is going to be for companies. This is no longer going to be a requirement. It's not going to be regulated by the government. And it's going to be up to leaders now to make that choice. If they want to maintain a competitive, innovative environment, diversity still has to be a cornerstone of how they operate. And so, in some ways, I'm optimistic that some leaders are going to be on the right side of history here and continue to move in a direction that feels diversity on their own as a choice, not as a check-a-box program. That I think is where some of the frustration came from. So I'm eagerly watching this trend, but it's certainly a choice that leaders will have to make. And the research is pretty clear here. Diverse companies will outperform those that are not.
Well, so are you saying that folks who look at this from the perspective of the free market and they say to themselves, well, I want the team that does the best job, then inherently it will be diverse and sort of the market will solve this?
I hope so. At the end of the day, though, we are human and we certainly know that there's bias out there. And so I do encourage, especially like HR professionals, this needs to be regulated within your own company. You need to have the policies and programs in place that make diversity easy for your organization. And so again, this is going to be something that companies are going to have to tackle on a base-by-base basis. I want to say the free markets are going to work here, but I'm also realistic and know that as humans, we are biased. And so sometimes it may be a biased free market going on, which is why we still need to make sure that we've got the leadership programs in place to make this easy for leaders today.
Hey, Kelly, one last question. Just got about 45 seconds, excuse me. That would be a long question or a long response. First Fed meeting is next week. Dual mandate, of course, watching inflation and the labor market. How would you describe the U.S. labor market right now? You guys have an interesting, unique vantage point. So how would you describe it right now?
Yeah, right now, I think the labor market is in transition. We see this at Upwork today. We're moving into much more specialized skills. As companies get smarter with how they're using AI, it's becoming much clearer where they need the talent. And so we're a labor market in transition, and those that are being able to upskill and reskill and keep alongside of this technology, I think are going to continue to be employed. And we're certainly seeing that on the freelancer side.
All right, great to catch up with you. Thank you so much. Kelly Monahan, she's Managing Director of the Upwork Research Institute. As we remind you, it is the research arm of the platform Upwork, joining us from Orlando, Florida. All right, folks, we are just about 26 minutes away from the closing bell. A reminder, next Wednesday is that first